It usually starts as a joke, something quick, something harmless, a moment you can laugh about later. But not every prank stays under control. Some cross a line, and the situation changes faster than anyone expects. In this video, you'll hear 3 scary horror stories about pranks gone horribly wrong, moments that began as simple setup and quickly turned into something far more unsettling. If you enjoy horror stories like this, like the video and subscribe. And if you want to support the channel even more, super thanks are always appreciated.
My roommate David and I ran a moderately successful channel focused on public reaction videos. We were 19, living in a rural college town in Ohio, and constantly looking for ways to increase our subscriber count. We decided our next video would involve a late-night highway prank. We bought a retail display mannequin, dressed it in jeans and a hooded sweatshirt, and stuffed the clothes with old towels to give it realistic weight and proportions. The plan was to drive out to Route 9, a desolate, unlit county road surrounded by dense cornfields and heavy woods. We would place the mannequin face down in the center of the right lane, hide in the deep drainage ditch about 30 feet away, and film the reactions of drivers who were forced to stop and check the body. We thought it would be a harmless scare. We arrived at the location around 1 in the morning. The moon was entirely covered by thick cloud cover, making the highway pitch black. We positioned the mannequin perfectly so that headlights would catch it from at least 100 yards away. David set up 2 small cameras in the tall grass near the shoulder. We climbed down into the steep ditch, crouching in the damp dirt, and waited. For the first 40 minutes, not a single vehicle drove past. The isolation of the road was absolute. Finally, around 2:15, we saw the glow of headlights approaching from the north. The engine sounded heavy, like a diesel pickup or a commercial flatbed. We hit record on our main camera. The truck slowed down exactly as we anticipated. The brakes squealed loudly in the quiet night. The vehicle was a battered, dark-colored utility truck with a custom steel bed. The headlights illuminated the mannequin lying motionless on the asphalt. The truck came to a complete stop about 15 feet away. The engine idled loudly. We held our breath, waiting for the driver to jump out in a panic, check the pulse, and realize it was a dummy. That is not what happened. The driver's side door opened slowly. A large man wearing dark work clothes stepped out. He did not rush toward the body. He casually walked around to the back of his flatbed. He reached into a heavy metal toolbox mounted against the cab. When he walked into the beam of his own headlights, we could clearly see what he was holding. He had a thick roll of black industrial plastic sheeting and a handful of heavy-duty nylon zip ties. He walked up to the mannequin. He did not kneel down to check for breathing. He kicked the side of the dummy hard with his heavy work boot. The hollow plastic sound echoed loudly against the trees. The mannequin shifted unnaturally, the stuffed clothing flattening against the pavement. The man froze. He looked down at the plastic head protruding from the hood. He dropped the zip ties onto the road. He stood completely still in the middle of the highway for an uncomfortable amount of time. He realized immediately that a plastic dummy does not end up on a deserted road by accident. He slowly turned his head, scanning the dark tree line on both sides of the road. David and I were paralyzed in the ditch. We realized we had just staged a prank for someone who drove around at 2 in the morning, equipped to dispose of human remains. The man walked back to his truck. He reached into the cab and pulled out a high-powered, handheld spotlight. He flicked it on. The beam was blindingly bright, cutting through the darkness like a solid object. He started sweeping the spotlight back and forth across the deep brush on the opposite side of the highway. He was looking for us. He knew whoever placed the dummy had to be close by to watch. We pressed ourselves flat against the muddy bottom of the ditch. The light swept directly over our heads, illuminating the tall grass just inches above us. Then the truck engine shut off. The silence that followed was entirely suffocating. We could hear the heavy crunch of his boots walking on the gravel shoulder. He was crossing the road toward our side. He was walking slowly, deliberately. The beam of the spotlight hit the tops of the trees above us. He was standing right at the edge of the asphalt, looking down into the darkness of our ditch. David squeezed his eyes shut. I gripped a rock in the mud, preparing for the worst. The boots continued walking along the shoulder, moving parallel to our position. He paced back and forth for nearly 10 minutes, stopping every few seconds to listen. We did not dare breathe. Finally, we heard him walk back to the truck. The heavy door slammed shut. The diesel engine fired up, and the truck slowly accelerated down the road, the red taillights disappearing into the dark. We stayed in that ditch for another 3 hours, until the sun came up. We abandoned the cameras, the mannequin, and the channel entirely. We never reported it to the police, because we had no license plate and no proof of an actual crime. We just know that we accidentally auditioned to be victims, and we barely survived the screening process. I worked the graveyard shift at an independent gas station located right off a major interstate exchange. The job was mind-numbing. From midnight until 6 in the morning, the store was completely dead. The only people who came in were long-haul truckers, insomniacs, and one specific regular customer. He was a tall, heavily scarred man who came in every single night at exactly 3 in the morning. He always wore a faded green military surplus jacket. He never spoke a word. He would pour a large black coffee, place exact change on the counter, stare directly at me for a few seconds, and walk out. His presence always made me deeply uncomfortable. My friend Kyle often hung out in the back office during my shifts to keep me company. We were both obsessed with viral prank videos on social media. One night, I had a terrible idea. I wanted to film a prank that would finally get a reaction out of the creepy regular customer. The plan was simple. When the man came in for his coffee at 3, Kyle would burst through the front doors wearing a black ski mask, holding a realistic-looking airsoft pistol. He would shout at me to empty the register. We figured the customer would either run out the door or dive behind the aisles, giving us hilarious security footage. At 2:55 in the morning, Kyle went outside and waited behind the dumpster. At exactly 3 o'clock, the regular customer walked in. He went straight to the coffee station, completely silent as usual. The bell on the front door chimed again. Kyle burst in. He had the ski mask pulled down. He pointed the plastic gun directly at me and screamed, telling me to open the drawer. I expected the customer to panic. I expected him to drop his coffee. He did neither. The man turned around slowly. His expression did not change. He did not look scared. He looked annoyed. In one fluid, practiced motion, the man reached into his jacket, closed the distance between himself and Kyle, and grabbed the barrel of the fake gun. He twisted it violently upward. Kyle screamed in actual pain as his wrist snapped loudly. The man kicked Kyle hard in the back of the knee, forcing him to the floor. He dropped his heavy boot directly onto Kyle's neck, pinning him against the linoleum tiles. It happened in less than 3 seconds. The man then reached around to the small of his back and pulled out a real heavy steel revolver. He pointed it directly at Kyle's head. I panicked. I threw my hands in the air and screamed that it was a prank. I yelled that the gun was fake and that Kyle was my friend. The man did not look at me. He kept his eyes locked on Kyle. He pressed the barrel of the revolver against Kyle's temple. He spoke for the first time since I had known him. His voice was completely calm, devoid of any adrenaline. He said he did not care if it was a prank. He said he recognized Kyle's shoes from the security footage of a rival operation he had dealt with a month ago. He was convinced Kyle was sent by someone to tie up loose ends. Kyle was sobbing, begging for his life, swearing he was just a college student and that we were filming a video. The man ignored him. He reached into his pocket with his free hand and pulled out a handful of heavy plastic zip ties. He ordered me to come around the counter. He told me to secure Kyle's hands behind his back. I told him no. The man shifted the gun from Kyle and pointed it directly at my chest. He told me that if I did not secure his hands, he would shoot both of us and burn the store down to cover the evidence. He was not making a threat. He was stating a fact. My hands were shaking violently. I walked around the counter, took the plastic ties, and bound my best friend's wrists together. Kyle looked at me with absolute terror in his eyes. The man then ordered me to lock the front doors and pull the metal security grate down. I complied. For the next 2 hours, the gas station became a nightmare. The man systematically interrogated Kyle in the back aisle near the coolers. He wanted names of people we had never heard of. He wanted addresses we did not know. He used physical violence to emphasize every question. Every time Kyle denied knowing anything, the man escalated his methods. I was forced to sit behind the counter and watch, completely paralyzed by the gun sitting on the counter within the man's reach. Around 5 in the morning, the man finally realized Kyle was actually telling the truth. He looked at the plastic gun on the floor, then looked up at the security camera mounted above the door. He walked over to the counter, took his gun, and told me to go into the back office and pull the hard drive from the camera system. I did it without hesitation. He took the hard drive, walked back over to Kyle, cut the zip ties with a pocket knife, and told him if he ever wore a mask in public again, he would finish the job. He walked out the front door and disappeared into the dark. Kyle required surgery for his arm and extensive therapy. The police never found the man. We played a joke on a man who lived his entire life expecting to be hunted, and we paid the price for waking him up. My brother used to run an entire channel dedicated to aggressive driving. He had a custom dash cam setup with multiple angles covering the front, rear, and interior of his sports car. His entire format consisted of finding people driving slightly below the speed limit in the left lane, aggressively tailgating them, flashing his high beams, and boxing them in to provoke a reaction. When they flipped him off or rolled down their windows to scream, he would upload the footage with clickbait titles. I always told him he was going to mess with the wrong person. He never listened. It happened on a Tuesday night in November. He was driving back from a car show in a neighboring state. He was on Interstate 70, a long flat stretch of highway that cuts through miles of empty farmland. It was past midnight, and the road was completely devoid of traffic. He caught up to a single vehicle, driving exactly 65 miles an hour in the left lane. It was a large, modern black SUV with heavily tinted windows. It had no defining features and no custom license plates. My brother saw an opportunity for content. He sped up, riding just inches from the SUV's rear bumper. He laid on the horn and flashed his brights repeatedly. Normally, a driver will either speed up, switch lanes, or hit their brakes to scare him. The black SUV did none of those things. It maintained its exact speed. It did not drift. It simply ignored him. My brother got annoyed. He switched to the right lane, accelerated hard, and cut violently in front of the SUV, slamming on his brakes. This is known as a brake check. It is incredibly dangerous. He slowed his car down to 40 miles an hour, forcing the SUV to match his speed. He looked in his rearview mirror expecting the driver to be raging behind the wheel. The tint on the windshield was too dark. He could not see inside. Then, the SUV did something that completely broke my brother's bravado. The driver turned their headlights off. At 40 miles an hour, in the middle of a pitch-black rural interstate, the massive vehicle directly behind him simply vanished into the dark. My brother panicked. He sped back up to 70. He checked his mirrors constantly. He could not see anything. He assumed the driver had pulled over or exited. 10 minutes later, his rear dashcam monitor flickered. The black SUV had not left. It was driving exactly 10 feet behind him, completely blacked out, matching his speed perfectly without the use of headlights. The driver was navigating entirely by the glow of my brother's taillights. My brother hit the gas, pushing his car over 90 miles an hour. The SUV stayed right with him, a massive invisible shadow locked onto his bumper. Every time my brother changed lanes, the shadow followed. My brother started screaming in his car, yelling at the camera, completely losing his composure. He tried calling the police, but there was no cellular service on that stretch of the interstate. He needed to get off the road. He saw a sign for an exit approaching in 2 miles. He waited until the absolute last second, swerved violently across 2 lanes, and took the off-ramp at a dangerous speed. He thought he had lost them. He reached the bottom of the ramp. The road ended at a T intersection. There were no streetlights, no gas stations, just miles of empty fields. As he hit the brakes at the stop sign, the interior of his car was suddenly flooded with blinding white light. The SUV had followed him down the ramp. It pulled directly behind him and turned its high beams on, trapping his car against the intersection. My brother locked his doors. He reached into his glove compartment for a heavy metal flashlight, terrified of what was about to happen. He watched the rearview mirror closely. The driver's side door of the SUV did not open. Instead, all 4 doors opened simultaneously. My brother could not see the people stepping out because the headlights were blinding the camera entirely. He only saw their silhouettes moving methodically into the beam of light. There were 4 of them. They did not run toward his car. They walked slowly, fanning out, surrounding his vehicle on all sides. They were completely silent. They did not carry weapons that he could see, but their posture was terrifyingly calm, like a coordinated tactical unit preparing to dismantle a vehicle. My brother did not wait for them to reach his windows. He slammed his foot on the gas, ran the stop sign, turned right blindly into the dark, and pushed his car as fast as it would go down the narrow country road. He drove for 30 miles until he finally found an open truck stop. He never uploaded the dashcam footage from that night. He uninstalled the cameras, sold the car the following week, and deleted his channel entirely. He still checks his locks 3 times every night. He realized that the worst thing you can do on an empty road is successfully get a stranger's attention, because you never know who you are inviting to play your game. And that's all for tonight. Remember, the most terrifying monsters are the ones that look just like us. The ones who might even live right next door. If these stories serve as a good reminder to trust your instincts, then show your support and like and subscribe. Hitting that bell means you'll get a warning before the next nightmare begins. Sleep well, if you can.